And I am live on Heart of the City, San Diego. What is going on, everybody? This is Monday night at 8:30 p.m. and we are in a series of lessons called Magnitude 10.0. And we're going to be talking a lot about the subject of hope and miracles and all that good stuff. And I just want to kind of gear you guys up for the week and give you some tools to take into your workplace and stuff like that. I'm laughing because, throughout the years of my salvation, it's been now 40, like 40 years, because I'm, not young. And I've gone through a lot of different situations. I'm a little bit cheeky. Can be can be sassy. And I have a history of, just plopping down my Bible somewhere and suddenly I have a Bible study. I have never gone to university to get, a scholarship in biblical teaching or anything. I don't know if that will help me. I'm not sure. But I did go to school for pastoral care and counseling. And I could tell you this, there through the course in university in London, I was the person I would just plop down my Bible and just believe God for the best, right? Just believe Him and just lay hands on people and people would be getting healed. And I knew enough to walk them through some healing, right? But studying pastoral care and counseling, there was a time when it put a damper on it, because then I became trusted to the process of learning a technique or whatever, right? Or a series of questions, or body language, and I started learning all these things, right? Psychological stuff and all, which was very interesting to me. I loved it. I still love it. I recommend it, people to go to it. But if you're not careful, which is what happens to many, many people when they go to school, they go to university, and stuff like that. And a lot of people have, turned away from God for a time in their university years and stuff. But I didn't turn away from God. But what I'm saying is it put a damper in it a little bit, and instead of there being like a spiritual movement when I was, praying for people and stuff, it became more of me using a technique that I learned in university. And when I learned to, blend the two together and let it operate, let the Holy Spirit operate in the organic way that He operates, then, God began to move supernaturally again. But there was a time when that supernatural stuff kind of went away, and I was like worried. I was like, "What? Why is this?" And as I began to look at it, in dealing with people throughout the years, it was because of that, but God still put me in situations where I was, minding my own business, and suddenly, there I am and I have to rescue this girl, or I'm minding my own business and suddenly, I'm witnessing to, some punker guy, sitting on the wall and he gets saved, or I'm minding my own business. This one I wasn't minding my own business. I did this on purpose. I took a big old Bible like this, but way bigger than this one that said Holy Bible on it. No shame, no nothing. And I plopped it on my lap, I plopped it like this way so that you could see where it says Holy Bible, right? It was giant. I think it's at my mom's house. And, because I just moved, so I think I still have stuff over at her house. But, yeah, so like, I was in National City and, sat down at the Kimball Park in the amphitheater, was sitting on the steps. And there I am, and suddenly, the skateboarder comes by, and he's skating back and forth, and he's he's scoping me out. This is this kid, right? Like, this kid is scoping me out, and then he comes back with another kid, and now they're both scoping me out, right? So finally, one kid that originally was scoping me out finally gets the courage to come and talk to me. So he says, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And then he goes, "I see you sitting here, but what is that you're reading?" Because obviously he thought it was a Bible, and he's had probably some, church background that someone has witnessed to him or something, right? So he's kind of like, now the temptation, the curiosity is way too strong, right? He has to know. And so he starts to ask me, and I said, "I'm reading the Bible." And I just kind of do that. I'm kind of really cheeky like that, where I just will say, answer the question and then see what they say next, and I was waiting and waiting. I'm pretty good at the waiting game. And so then he asked the next question, and so he said, "Oh, yeah, why?" I said, "Why not?" And I go, "Here, you want apple pie?" Because then I, on purpose, went to McDonald's and had a whole bunch of apple pies and coffee. And so, just in case I would run into someone, and sure enough, he took the apple pie, and the other guy took the coffee, and they were now like every I think it was every Tuesday I went down there. So then every Tuesday they knew it was me. And they would come over and, kind of ask me, can you pray for this? Can you pray for that? This kind of thing and this kind of thing. Next thing you know, they're telling me that one of them's struggling with drugs and the other one's, struggling with things at home. And, right away when people see you with this big old giant Bible, they just start telling you stuff. So I'm there now. Now I'm there, and I'm praying for them, and and next thing you know, I'm there, and there's now 5 kids. Kids. I mean, they're like maybe 17 to 19 years old kind of age, and 5 skateboarders, coming from the skate park that was in the distance back there, and they're now all around me. They're all around me on the steps. I'm sitting on the steps, and they're all like around me listening, right? While they're eating an apple pie or whatever, and asking questions and stuff. And I crazily have this Bible study, and I'm like, and it blows my mind, because you got to understand, when I came to Christ, I was this broken, just coming out of, being in a kind of foster care. My teacher had just did an intervention with my parents and me, and they allowed me to come and stay with them, him and his wife, and they were great, good people, just good people. And, they instilled a lot of hope and encouragement and direction in my life. And, but when I came, and all of this stuff happened while living with them. So like God, I had an encounter with God in my home, in their home, randomly. And, God touched my life, and it was supernatural. It was crazy, a crazy, spiritual thing that happened to me. And changed the course of my life, and it's hard to explain, but it was just a spiritual thing, and I knew that it was God. There's no doubt that it had to have been God. So, and my past was, there was nothing good in that. Nothing good in my past. Now, I didn't do drugs, and I wasn't like, a drinker or any of those things. But, I was out there, and I was, doing all the things that, people did. And, going to, we didn't go clubbing, but, we went to the car club parties and stuff. But, God took me and gave me some direction, and so did these people. And next thing you know, I meet another person, and they say, go to this church. And so I end up going to this church, and, I end up, the pastor, he's this, the way I envision him, okay, not knowing at this point his past or anything, but I see him, and he's this, true 70s veterano, okay? He's a cholo to the cholo max, okay? A lowrider to the max, like the 70s kind, with the thing, not a little skinny goatee, with the real like straight nose and chin, and the chiseled hair, and the whole persona. But he looked like he reminded me of he was that, but he was also, in a sense, a Jay Shetty as well. He was like a guru, and he had that essence of, of a monk. He had the essence of a Cholo monk, right? In fact, they should change his name to Cholo Monk. But he was cool. Like, he was the coolest of the coolest of cholos. And, he would say, "Don't, you got to come every time those doors are open. You got to be there." Kind of like the cholo. and, I'm this punk rock kid. I'm like, I'm coming from, I'm a former motocross athlete. I've done a lot of wild things in my life. I come from like the desert scene, and we're down at 24th Street all the time. Fiesta Island, when Fiesta Island used to do dirt bike riding, back in the 70s. I'm coming from the all of the 4x4ing stuff, and all the underground punk movement and all of that, and I'm like, he sees me as like, he's happy to have me, because I'm the only one that's like that. I'm the only one like that. Everybody else comes from a Catholic background, and they're very obedient, and I was not. None of that. In fact, I was always labeled rebel to the highest level. And so here I am, and, they encounter Gloria. And, they say, "Hey, you got, every time those doors are open, be there." And then next thing you know, like, I'm going into my career as a career working, I just got, finished school and going into my first real career job, and my first real, rental car, buying a car. I've always had a car, but, this is the first time I ever bought one at the dealership kind of thing. And I was making payments on it. So, I'm living at this really nice condo, this got like a pool. It's just nice, and like a block from the beach and everything. And so here we are. And he's now saying, "You got to be at church at 5 a.m. for prayer meeting," and this is like, I'm I think I forget, but I think it was every day, every morning. And we didn't have the Starbucks drive-through. You had to drive down. We had the 7-Eleven. Okay, 7-Eleven was the cool place to go. You stopped at 7-Eleven. You got yourself, a tiny bit of coffee and mostly sugar and mostly milk. When you're like 19, 20 years old. I like see it now and I'm like, that is so gross. Because I drink my coffee straight black. But so I can't handle that much sugar anymore. And so there we go. And I'm cold and, I'm young. I don't want to go to no, uncool place to go pray and sit down on those metal chairs that are torture when it's cold. And so I do that. But when I remember back, I remember all the miracles that took place during that time. When I look back, I remember the sound of his voice praying. I remember his cholo voice praying. I remember those days, and I remember the stories, the great stories of healing and signs and wonders. And I remember, people turning away from their sin, wanting God in a true organic way, not with manipulation, not with any of those things. We didn't have smoke machines. We didn't have any. We used to have some guest person from up in LA. We're from a larger organization, and it was a guest who used to come around with a acoustic guitar, and he was a hillbilly. He would play bluegrass. I was like, you got a cholo who likes lowrider music. You got a hillbilly, singing to us hillbilly songs, bluegrass stuff. Not in Bar Logan, in San Ysidro, where people like, their Mexican music. Then you got me, and I'm this punker, from motocrosser, 70s, wild person, but I wasn't really wild, but I had done a lot of wild, daredevil things. Daredevil would be more the word, but, I didn't have any, I was like a wild horse. There was no restraints on me, I didn't grow up with all that restraint stuff and, curfews and stuff. So I had to, but weirdly how I didn't become, I wasn't into drugs or drinking or anything. So there I was, and here I'm an observer. I've always been an observer. And so I'm taking all of this in because that's the kind of person that I am, right? And I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, it's a mixture of all these elements, and they come together, so well, right? We're all together. And when we worshiped all together, it was like a unity that was like no other. And there was a movement of God when we worshiped. And this was just acoustic guitar style, later on we had the clanging of somebody who couldn't play the drums, and then, somebody who could somewhat sing, and then someone who was an expert to the expert level of expert in playing an electric guitar. And so he was like Santana style. And then that became like, ear-piercingly hurtful. And we had some random person that would come in with a tambourine, and then my ears are really sensitive. So like, I was like, I have a headache now every time I leave church. So, I just was like, and because I'm so sensitive to, observing all this stuff that goes on. And I don't know what that is. I don't know, what was going on with me. And later on, as I dived into the scriptures and things, and looking at, the gifts that are in the Bible, and, signs and wonders of things that people did, and, how God used people in different ways and things, and how God spoke and stuff like that. And, I still started to realize that, there's some reason why that is happening. And it's probably some kind of a spiritual gift that is just given to each and every one of us. And so I just, began to, share with others, what I was feeling and thinking and stuff. And sometimes people didn't know, like my pastor didn't really, he knew that it was a gift, but he didn't know, he didn't have that gift, so he didn't know how to explain it. But later on, as people would come and teach at our, church, they would share, about different teachings on the Bible and stuff, and finally it would click in. But so I want to keep us remembering, that God still moves today, because like we're seeing things today, and a lot of it is like a lot of I don't want to say noise, because we're all useful. We're all trying to find our way. And I never want to step in the way of, what God is doing, even if I don't understand it, because we're never going to ever understand everything fully of what God is trying to get us to do, or involved in us with when we're doing it. We have the scriptures as reference, and as the holy word of God, and him speaking to us, but that's not just it. That's not limited to that. There's no limit. And so some things we're never going to understand. We just see the manifestation of the fruit of those things. And if the fruit of those things bring people to turn from their wicked ways and turn to Jesus Christ, then we know that was a God thing. It was that God was in that, like the day that I landed to go and visit England to start the church. I told our host, because he said no wives ever came. No wives ever came to that. And I said, I'm never going to be that person. You can tell me 1,000 times over, I'm never going to be that person. That's not going to happen. And, I have to go and see where I'm going to bring my kids to. I have to see it for myself. This is, I'm just sorry. So, and I said, if I go and talk to that, take me to the worst possible place I'm going to be, that is next to where I'm going to be living. What does it look like? I want to see what it looks like. And so we went into the Marduk estate, which was notorious back in those days. Back in 1995, it was notorious for, lots of bad stuff. It was very dark stuff back in those, like the projects in LA and, that kind of thing. And we went in there, and I said, if we go in there and somebody gets saved, and they let me approach them. And, if I see God move, I know I'm meant to be here. And sure enough, that's where I walked up to the punker guy, the typical old 80s punker, you know, spiked hair, earrings all over and hanging chains hanging off his ear to his mouth, and spikes and just leather, and it looked like he didn't want to be approached. But when I did approach him, he was the nicest guy ever, and he's very happy to talk to me. Hey, you're not from around here, are you, mate? And then I said, no. I go, that church down there? He goes, yeah. And he goes, I go, well, that's the church that, I'm going to be ministering in and stuff. And he goes, oh, yeah. I've tried to go there a couple of times, just to go to Easter or whatever. And when I was young, and they didn't let me go in. And I was like, what? Why? Who? And then, so the story goes on, and they had stopped him for years to not go in, and because of the way he looked. And the church had become more like a social club with only a handful of really old people that had the church for years and years. It was like five people, and they were all leaders, and no one came in, no one went out, and the only way you went out is because you got old and and that was the end of life. And literally, I kid you not. And it just kept going like that, it just kept going like that. And finally, I said to him, well, that's not happening anymore. It's a whole different time now. And so just come. And so he said, okay, I will. So he did. He actually showed up, and somebody was at the door, and they were telling him to leave. And I busted them doing that. And I went out there and I told that guy, I didn't tell the guy anything in front of the punker guy. I just said, go ahead, go, while the guy was like, and I said, go, it's okay. Sit in the front. And so he did sat in the front, and he got saved, like it was a big moment for that guy. And it just, I didn't have pictures back then, we didn't have this, I didn't have cell phones, and I wasn't carrying around a camera or anything. So we didn't have photos of it. I just have what's in my imagination of that day. I think we have taken some photos. I don't know if we captured a photo of that guy, but yeah, that was the day that I said, this is God, and to be honest, people got saved so easy. It was not even a chore. It wasn't hard at all. And then a young girl from out of the blue was walking by and started chatting to us, outside of the church or something. I forget how we met her. And she said she was in college, and at this point she was going through her high school years. And then she went through her high school, college, and university. And when she got to college, she was struggling. And so she said, she used to have to walk past the church every morning. She said, would it be possible if I come and pray in the morning, and stuff? And I, like, this light bulb went off in my head. Like, duh, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't the church doors open for this stuff, right? Why aren't we doing this? And I said, yeah, of course. So we opened the door for her. And there she went every morning, came by, went in, prayed, went out, went in, prayed, went out. And so she finally finished university and all those things, and now married a great man, and things like that. But so many wonderful things like that have happened, and it's just amazing that the things that God does, and I mean, the high school events that we had, those were events. So those, that was like concerts, and and it really in the end became like it was a wild, time there at the high schools in London. But I mean, they were massive like concerts, and lots and lots and lots of people. They was like thousands of kids would get saved. But now only a few of them are still around and have served God. So, so I understand the thing where people, flocks and flocks of people follow you, and, you have this window of opportunity to share the gospel. Where it lands, it's iffy. You know what I mean? It just lands wherever, but we need people to stay the course, stay in the game, have longevity, and stick to it. And that's what I want to talk to you all about, stick to it, stay the course. And I'm going to read to you Colossians 16, 1 verse 16, okay? Let me see, do I want to share with you a little bit? Colossians 1:16, and it says this. It says, "For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him." All things were created by him and for him. We were created for God. That's why, every human being, when they feel empty, they have like a hunger, this hunger that kind of manifests inside of them. And they're on a search for, what is that? What is the meaning of life? What is this hunger that I feel? Until they find the Bible, they find the purpose, they find Jesus. And when they find the Bible, the purpose, the Jesus, and ask Jesus to come into their hearts and forgive them of their sins, they find that urging, that hunger, that the meaning for life begins to unfold. Finally, there's like this kind of big sigh that says, of relief, that says, "Oh wow, I found it. I found the way." And so, but that way doesn't just start. That's the start of the way, right? That's the start of it. It's kind of like when. I don't have a desire to run a marathon at all. I do not have a desire. I like to walk, and I like to drink a coffee, and I like to talk. Okay. I like to, take it easy, check out the scenery, have a deep, meaningful conversation with someone, tell them about Jesus, and bring them with me. and we share coffee together, right? On a marathon, you have to train for that thing, and it is torture. You have to then, you know, endure the race. And there comes a time where runners call it the wall, where they hit this place where either they're going to they feel like they have to give up. And then suddenly, this other kind of miraculous burst of energy kicks in, and they have this kind of weird thing that takes place. I don't know what it's called, but it gives them that ability to go the rest of the way. And it's kind of the same thing when you're serving God, you know. And again, I've never ran a marathon. I don't want to, don't ever have a desire to, nothing like that. Nothing. I am not like a jogger runner, you know, and I just like to walk, you know. I love to, you know, play around on my jump rope, you know, but that's like a little spurt here and a little spurt there, you know what I mean? I like to cruise around, you know, surf skating on my skateboard, but, you know, I'm not the one that's going to be like on, you know, in the skate park kind of thing. I just like to cruise, you know, on the boardwalk or whatever. But in serving God, you're going to hit places in that where you're going to feel it, you know. But then again, you know, I met a young girl from the Ukraine who says, you know, what is this burnout? What is this burnout? She says, you know, I don't even know the meaning of burnout. What are you talking about burnout? You know, she's like, we don't even have you know, in her broken English, the way that I interpreted it, and maybe she can correct me if she ever hears this. The way I interpret it is that, you know, like, I don't even have the opportunity or even the choice to have a burnout. You know, we're in the middle of a war. We don't have, you know, the luxury of having a burnout day. You know what I mean? That's what I was like gathering her body language and her broken English as she was sharing this. What's this burnout? I was like, oh man, and I'm having a burn. Like, I get burnt out. You know, sometimes I'm so burnt. I'm like socially drained. And she's like, what is this burnout? You know, who has a burnout? You know, my dad taught me to serve God. She says her dad's over in the Ukraine, living in the Ukraine, in the middle of this oasis that has not been hit at all by, or, you know, just this protective little place that hasn't been hit by war yet. You know, in the outskirts and like in town and stuff, there have been places, buildings hit. Yes, you know, malls and things have been hit. But where their church is in their little town area, it hasn't been hit. You know, but they go day after day after day, providing hope, providing prayer, providing food, providing, you know, whatever they can provide, you know, and just the story over and over and over again. And I just hear what she says in the ringing in her, you know, it rings in my ear, the message that she shares. I've heard her speak, you know, while I was there in Poland and stuff. And, you know, what is this burnout? She's so like frustrated with this, right? What is this? You know, can you imagine though? We have the luxury of, you know, having the opportunity to have a burnout. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, isn't it? You know, we live in San Diego, which is beautiful. We're so spoiled, right? I mean, you know, I pop over to the ocean and I'm walking around taking photos, you know, trying to learn photography, right? And I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I work 24/7. And I do ministry, full-time ministry. And, and so does she. So does she, right? So does she, and still travels into the Ukraine. Now, I don't have to be her, and I don't have to do that, and I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not that either. That is the life that has been given to her. We have the opportunity to help, to let her know that we're there for her. And I will never forget, the tonal, language in her voice. What is this burnout? Like if I don't have the choice to have a burnout. And so, we have been so spoiled. We have the luxury, we have this luxury. People, can make millions of dollars, and does that make them happy? The pursuit of, money? I've sat with many different people. I mean, I literally, kid you not, have sat with, people that are millionaires, and some without Jesus, friendly, a great time. I still go and hang out with them when I go down there to England and stuff, they're friendly. But, then I met people who loved God, who they really loved God, and they were also millionaires, and they used their money to, they had a mansion, a Ferrari and a Lotus sitting in their car, but the wife, what car does the wife want to drive all the time? She wanted to drive her little BMW Beetle. That's what she wanted to drive. She was a car girl. She was an old lady, but she liked cars. And that was the car she liked. That's the one she drove. That was her daily car, her BMW Beetle. And, she would make a joke. She was like, oh, those things are useless. What's the use? How, they're too, what do you call it? Too fragile, and and stuff. And so she had some fine tea dishes that her husband used to like to serve us tea with. she's like, oh, like, why are you taking those out? She's like, they're useless. They're just there for looks. She's like, I can't put them in the dishwasher. And I was like, I was cracking up, and so she was down to earth, She grew up, in the East End of London, her and her husband, and they grew up, in the middle of World War II, I think it was, right? World War II. And, they seen poverty, they seen it all, they seen that, and they worked their way to, with the educations that they had and stuff, they worked their way to, to what they have today. And they're no longer alive. Both of them are now no longer here on earth anymore. But, they made an impact on people's lives, He was a part of Christian Solidarity, and he used his education to help, people who needed solidarity, like missionaries. I went to a couple of conferences with him, and there was some missionaries who their husbands were taken in the Amazon jungle, and they weren't ever found. And, you know, these ladies tell their story and stuff, and they've helped out. Christian Solidarity has helped out with that, or helped out with people stuck in other countries, and just other things like that. And so he's used his time and money for that type of thing. That's what he was really into. And so I got to see the sides of where his value laid, and it was just amazing, and then I seen the sides of the value of my other friends that, have money, that I hang out with, when I go to London and stuff. And, they have value, they have values. It's different, but, I don't know if they handle their stress, how people handle their stress. These two people were different. So, and that's, I don't judge people either way. I try to remain, a representative of Jesus, and I try to remain, neutral in that, anyone can come to God, and so I don't, when I'm with people, especially people that I care about, I don't share my political beliefs or anything like that. I do have to do my part as part of society and stuff, and others have to do their part in a way of, how, you have to campaign. How are you going to let people know, who to vote for if you don't campaign and stuff, right? That's what we do when we're sharing the gospel and stuff. It's a type of campaigning, hey, this is the way, this is the right way, you know what I mean? And there's only one right way, and that right way is Jesus. Okay. So, I hope that this helps you, through the rest of your week and stuff, because when you go into the workplace, you're going to be bombarded with all of this stuff. This last thing, the most recent thing is the Super Bowl. Okay. The Super Bowl, and, one person wanting, one side wanting to, bring out what they thought was a religious thing. I don't know. And another thing is, the music artists. So I just am like, it's so bizarre. It's bizarre to me. I have some real strong opinions on all of that, but again, and I am actually purposely hinting those strong opinions right now, and I don't want to do that, but it's just, one person said it like this. I heard, and I liked that they said it like this, okay? And it was a music artist, a well-known San Diego band, and he said this. He said, everyone thinks that we're a Christian band. We're not a Christian band. We're just a band, and we play the music that we play. We're just a band. We're not a Christian band. But he said, but I am a Christian. I'm a Christian, the lead singer of this band. He says, but I am a Christian. Okay. But I can't speak for the rest of the band members, but the band itself is not a Christian band. We're just a band. When we play music, and whoever likes our music, we're grateful for that, right? I'm adding a little bit to that, I think, but I liked what he said. So good on you for saying that, because people then try to put you in a box. People will try to put you in the perception that they see you, and that's the box that you're going to be in their eyes. Okay? So, and I believe in not allowing people to put you in limits, they're going to, because no matter what you do in life, if you are the pastor of a church, people are going to limit you on how, what they think you should be like. Okay. If you wear the wrong shoes, if you wear the wrong hat, if you, wear the wrong jacket, if you, you can't, or you wear the right shirt or the right jacket, you're liked and then you're not liked, then you're liked and then you're not liked. So you gotta be like, okay, you gotta shut all those people out, and just be like, I just wear what I think is what I like and what is appropriate, and I'm just gonna be, true and raw with you, and that's it, right? Other people just wear neutral stuff. You see movie stars out there and they're like, they decided I'm not going to wear any name brands. I'm not going to represent somebody's name brand, and unless they're paying me for it. You know what I mean? And someone said this really good one time. I had just moved to San Diego, and I went out with some friends. We went to Harry's Cafe in La Jolla, right? And I was in the moment, how you just get in the moment. I was in this touristy, I'm, having a meal in La Jolla, dork, and then I was like, oh, I gotta buy that jacket that says Harry's La Jolla on it, right? I wore it to work, and it was an admiral. He was an admiral in the Navy, right? I guess he's like the highest of the highest rank that you could be, right? And he was very bulldogish, right? Look, he probably smoked cigars, that kind of guy. And so I'm walking by, and he's like, oh, hey, I've eaten there before at Harry's La Jolla. He goes, I like that place. And I go, oh yeah. I bought the shirt. I just love this shirt. You know what I mean? Like a dork. And I'm like, I just love this shirt. And he goes, I've eaten there. He goes, I wouldn't say I love it. He goes, maybe if I say I love it, they better be paying me at that point, and he goes, I don't think, he goes, and I like to eat there, and I spend money giving it to them, but I wouldn't buy their shirt and wear it unless they paid me to wear it. and so, and I mean, he gave me a good earful, and I was like, that's so true. That's so true. Right? With my dorky self, I'm like, that's so true. I don't think I'm gonna wear anybody else's brand again. So, everybody has an opinion, and some people are the cigar smokers that they have a very strong opinion, and they will tell you to your face what their opinion is, and you don't care. I didn't ask you for my opinion. I didn't ask you for your opinion. So, and just as much as you didn't ask them for the opinion, other people didn't ask you for yours too. So that's something to think about, right? I'm going to let you guys go for now. I love you guys. I want you to remember that when going out to the workplace and all those things, you're going to get bombarded with, the Super Bowl topic, this thing and that thing and that thing and this thing, and, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand. And it's like, just be like, I don't really even care, you know, and it's a great game, it's fun to go to, but to get into all that other, it becomes about the halftime rather than the actual game itself. The halftime is the big deal, and it's not. Goodness gracious, and let's get so sidetracked. So anyway, Lord, keep us focused. Lord, keep us holy. Lord, keep us, on our knees, crying out to you. Keep us humble. Keep us knowing the magnitude of who you are. That you are massive. You are majestic. You are, all those things. And you hold the universe together. And you hold all these topics and issues and things together. And I pray, Lord, that you just teach us to know what it is that you would want us to do. How do we help in this world? In Jesus' name, amen. I encourage you, go to your workplaces and, just be someone who cares. When somebody's talking to you, just care, That's it. You don't have to know all the scriptures. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to, know who won the Super. I don't even know who won the Super Bowl. Who won? I was kidding. You don't have to know all of that, Sometimes I'm so dorky, I'm not even in this world. I don't even know what's going on in this world. I'm like, where am I at? I'm so immersed in, being focused on what it is that God is putting me to do, and I don't even know what commercially things are going on in this world right now. So nor do I really care. What is it to care about the Super Bowl? And the Super Bowl is cool, but the halftime stuff, I'm over it. It's just causing conflict, and I'm not into that. I'm really not into that. So I love you guys. Let there be peace in this world in Jesus' name. Amen. Bye.